how do you know, how does he speak to you? How do you know where to go? How did you know that he wanted you to combat sex trafficking and sex exploitation and do the stuff with the vulnerable kids and the proms? And
Good question.
I mean, where does this come from, and how does he speak to you? You know, we've already talked a lot about God spoke to your parents about going to the Philippines at the exact same time. God spoke to him about having another child, which was you, not doing an abortion, having faith. When is the first time that you felt God speak to you? And so when you, back to how God speaks to you, or the tugs on your heart, your gut,
Yes.
MVPs, you want to help the most vulnerable. You have that. There's a lot of vulnerable people out there in a lot of different ways. And so, how do you know which direction? The reason I'm asking about how God speaks to you is this is a new journey for me. I'm about 2 years into it. And so I'm learning to lean into my gut because I think that's where he speaks to me. And so I want to ask, I mean, what is it, a gut feeling? And how quick do you act on it? I mean, is it instantaneous? Do you grow confidence with it over time?
I'm going to answer this one directly to Shawn, but understand that this is more broadly applicable than to just him. Shawn, you've brought this question up many times in multiple interviews. It's clear that you really struggle with it. And what I want you to understand is that God knows who he made when he made you. He understands your psychology. He understands how you think. He understands your biology. He gets you. He made you. And so when you ask, how does he speak to you? Right now, he speaks to you in your gut because your faith is small and it's still growing. You're still in that phase where you're learning to trust him and you need constant reassurance that he's there. Something that I think would help you is to reread Exodus. And it's okay to skip over the dimensions and the materials involved in building the place of meeting or the tabernacle, whatever they call it in your translation. But you can skip over that. You can skip over a lot of the priestly details and like how do you make an offering. That's all fluff for what I'm trying to get you to notice. But reread Exodus and realize that Moses starts off as a baby that's put in the water so he doesn't get killed. He becomes a prince of Egypt because of the woman who finds him. He murders an Egyptian man and gets exiled. And then he works as a shepherd. He sees a burning bush and he goes and talks to God in the burning bush. God gives him a mission and he says, no, I don't speak well. No, I'm not the right person. No. He gives excuse after excuse after excuse. And finally, he goes and does the thing that God asks him to. He had the free will to say no. He could have said no. And if he did, he would have been destroyed immediately and instantly. Aaron was not part of that plan. Aaron got looped in much earlier than he was originally intended to come in. Aaron was going to be high priest once they left Egypt. And as you read through it, ask the question, is the reason that Aaron was so arrogant that he made the calf while Moses was up on Mount Sinai getting the Ten Commandments, was the reason why that happened because he had just spent so many years talking to Pharaoh and being an important figurehead and mouthpiece, and so he was full of himself? Like, ask the question, is that possible? Because it probably was. And then also realize Moses's main complaints are he's a nobody, he doesn't speak well, he has a speech impediment. We read the words on the page and we think he talks like you or I do. It's entirely possible that he had a lisp or a cleft mouth or any number of things that make somebody either hard to understand or just completely impossible. Some people have speculated he had a stutter. Regardless, how many guests do you have on your show who really struggle with a stutter? Like, you don't. The closest you got was Kyle Morgan, and you had all kinds of disclaimers about, like, hey, this is what fresh out of the military looks like. Moses' job talking to Pharaoh was not to succeed. His only job was to convey the message to Pharaoh. If Pharaoh didn't understand, that's actually fine. Pharaoh was never supposed to listen. Like, all of the plagues were supposed to hit Egypt. Moses' job was to fail at getting Pharaoh to listen. But his purpose was, okay, Pharaoh knows this is coming. He has free will. He can overcome my hardening and make a choice, but we both know he's not going to. Like, I really can't stress this to you enough. Moses wasn't supposed to succeed. The fact that he had a speech impediment was a feature, not a flaw. And that's very rarely pointed out in my experience. So it takes a year for all of the plagues to happen. Like, if you actually check, it's about a year of time for all the plagues to happen. And then the Hebrews leave Egypt. And after, I think it's about a year of being out in the desert, after they've crossed the Red Sea and after they've seen numerous miracles that are completely unexplainable, like the manna from heaven, even modern science has no clue what that is or how it happened. You look at this setup, and Moses is now so trusted by God because he so consistently listens and implements exactly what God says, that he's now allowed to go up on Mount Sinai and speak to God. Now, they say face to face, but then he also says anyone who sees my face is to be destroyed. So, how do you interpret that? I don't know. But as you read through Exodus, you will get a very clear idea that as time goes on, he gets closer and closer and closer to God and is allowed to experience him more and more and more deeply. And then in later books outside of Exodus, you actually read where Moses and the people get to the land of Canaan, the promised land of milk and honey. And Moses is not allowed in. And he's not allowed in because at near the end of the journey, he doesn't do exactly what God told him to do. And that gets him exiled from the land of Canaan. He ends up dying before they get there. And that was God punishing him for not doing exactly what he was told to do. So what I'm getting at is there is a very real problem or risk, or however you want to think about it, with developing and deepening that feeling. If you get to the point where God speaks to you audibly, or you see some physical manifestation of God, you don't practically have a choice to say no at that point. You can ask him, hey, can we negotiate on this? That's okay. But if he says, go do this, and you don't do it exactly the way he tells you to, that's usually a life-ending consequence immediately. Even if you've had decades of good service. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is be careful what you wish for. And understand, I don't say that flippantly. I say it as in the same way Jordan Peterson did. Like, do you actually comprehend how deep and intense what you're asking for is? It's more of a warning than a flippant,